how do you want to put a positive spin on all this stuff? You want to say friendly to the unfriendly, or do you want to?
Let's start off by talking about the non-supervisor overachiever who has to deal with all of those people.
Okay.
And the actions, because, we've had a hard time, right? We can just kind of go into it. We've had a hard time trying to match or meet the expectations of the 30-day challenge. And so why is that? Well, we consider ourselves overachievers. And when you are in a non-supervisory job and you're amongst all kinds of underachievers, I think you really have to embrace your professionalism at that point and maintain your direction. We've tried to do that 30-day challenge and can't do it.
You can't do it.
It
doesn't even take an hour. I just can't do it. So
no, and we're at the opposite end, overachieving as an underachiever. So you're either overachieving, regular jobs, or you're trying to be an exceedingly bad underachiever. There's no middle ground unless you're just a dud,
Right.
And so I think we've kind of proved that those types of people, either you're purposely being an underachiever or you are just a born underachiever.
Right. And actually, there's a lot of evidence out there that shows that most people their efforts are below average, and there's very few people that are accountable, on time, trustworthy, ethical, honest. The whole list goes on and on, because there's to actually do more than what's expected or what's asked for.
Right.
There's not too many of them out there.
No.
Because most of us are waiting for someone to tell us what to do instead of taking the initiative.
Right.
And whether you've been in a supervisor role, it doesn't really matter. It's you can be a entry-level employee and still see it.
Yeah, what's interesting is, years ago when we started, as an E1, whatever, when we were coming in, people would tell us, hey, just whatever you're doing, do the best you can, right? And to us, that's easy to, when you're looking at the person who's saying it, they've already achieved something. And they're telling you to just basically embrace the suck, is what they're telling you to do.
Embrace it, yes.
Yeah, that's what we always say in the service, embrace the suck. It sucks to be where we're at. Embrace it, And so, you're looking at that person who's telling you that, and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, you've already been through it, so, it's easy for you to tell us that. Well, to me, having gone through the world now 30 years later, I look at 30 years of experience later, is I look at it more as, when we were privates or coming into a position for the first time, no matter at what level, you're always going to have, you're the lowest ranking person, right?
Right.
And so you're the one that, you're going to get all the bad jobs anyway. That's just how it works, no matter where you go. So if you exceed in those bad jobs, it may be very difficult to do that when everyone's complaining around you, right? Because they're all thinking they're being punished, basically. But they're not. What that does is you are showing that no matter where you're placed, where your supervisors put you, you're going to be an overachiever. And many of those senior leaders have progressed because they probably were at one time or currently are overachievers. And so you can tell if you give a horrible, demeaning, task, hey, paint the rocks, you can tell after that task who is really probably going to be successful in other types of jobs, even if they're non-related.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Because
it's work
they're going
ethic.
to do, it's work ethic. They're going to do a little more than what's expected.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and so if they're turning over rocks, they're turning over every rock, and they're putting them all in line, or they
Right.
are, because their work is who they are.
Yes.
And so it doesn't matter what work you're doing.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's what it is. It boils down to the work is who you are. And we've had a lot of discussions about that throughout the years at work, as because a lot of us work a lot. I mean, we're
Oh, yeah.
and I guess we were workaholics, but at the end of the day, most people who gain a significant, a higher level of living are working a lot. I mean, it's kind of equal, right? The more you work, the luckier you get, and the luckier you get, the higher
I think
level
you
you
create your own luck
Right.
a lot of times by doing more. There's a old saying out there that you have to sacrifice something first, and a lot of times we sacrifice our time. If a musician is out there playing the pop star circuit, it may look like it's all glamorous, but they are giving up a lot of time and sacrifice for the family that's back at the house.
Yeah, right.
In order to do that, you have to give up something in order to get something.
Well, we were talking about that with John Maxwell. He's got 5 companies all over the world, traveling
Right.
and everything. And he gets up on stage, sits down on a chair for an hour and pontificates and talks about stuff. And you don't think much about it. And that's probably his relaxed time.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but, his that's his relaxed time. When he's on stage, that's his relaxed time. He's done all the preparation and hard work behind the scenes. And when he gets out there, that's the enjoyable time.
Right.
So he's basically created a very difficult situation. A lot of people stress out because they have to speak in front of people. They have to get up on stage, right? They have to do all that kind of stuff. And that's intimidating. For him, he's taken that aspect that intimidates most people and said, you know what? If I work extremely hard to plan this all out behind the scenes, then when I get up on stage, it's actually more relaxing than any other period of time of day.
Well, like a football team, if a football team doesn't practice hard and they don't work real hard in practice, the games are brutal. They're out of shape come the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
They have to exert themselves, and they're not used to doing that. But if they practice harder than the game is, the game is easy.
Right.
They're all in shape, and they're winning.
Right.
And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, and we always used to practice for the fourth quarter. I mean, that's what a lot of teams do, right?
Right.
So you practice all hour, and then you're practicing basically to go through the fourth quarter when most teams die off. And I think if folks look at work that way, I mean, at one point it's nice, to kind of take a breather and you sit back and go, well, if nobody's going to tell me what to do, then I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to be like the rest of these guys who are just air breathers, or and collecting a check.
Yeah.
But some of us, because we are our work, and it doesn't matter if you're a preacher, it doesn't matter if you're an intel officer, at the end of the day, you are something. People know you by something. And what do you want to know? And what do you want people to know you by, right? I used to have a great boss in Booz Allen Hamilton, and his comment to me, and I still talk to him, he was a previous commander, his comment to me after working on Booz was, what's your bumper sticker?
That's a good one. I like that.
And it really is an eye-opener, because when you have a military guy who says, hey, I can do anything you give me. Well, yeah, I know, and you can. but I got it. But what's your bumper sticker? What are you known by? And the challenge, I think, for a lot of service members is because we've worked every couple years in a different location or in a different job, and then you deploy, you come back. Basically, you have about 100 bumper stickers. And so which one do you choose? Well, our effort, what we say is, here's my portfolio. Which one do you want?
Right.
And that's a little more difficult in the civilian world than the military, right? And so in the civilian world, I think the military guys really have to take their portfolio and go, which one of these do I actually want to be known for? And let's focus on that.
Well, and again, I think just a little differently than that, because the one slogan that I always use myself, that I would say, okay, what's my bumper sticker? When you said that, it kind of made me think a little bit.
Right.
And it's something that I have it's above my desk at home, and it's basically, it says, be the 1%, whatever it takes.
Right.
And that's I live and die by that.
Sure.
Because I don't really follow followers. I don't follow the leader. I do what's right, and whatever is needed at that time, and I do really just do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And
so when does that, like when you're driving to another location, or when you're done with your day, how does that impact you? How does that statement? Do you think about that all day long? And how does that impact you?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, when you're it's the little things. It boils down. This is a great example of what I'm talking about. Is the other day we had at our house we had chip and seal done, which is when they put pavement, they put like tar on pavement, and then they scatter a bunch of pebbles all over the place, and they call it, paved, which is crazy. Anyway, so it makes a mess, and so I come home to my driveway, and I've got about 4 feet of gravel inside on my driveway.
Yeah.
Not tarred, thank goodness. The neighbor had his tarred, but not mine. Yeah. So I'm mowing, and one of the tasks that I had my son do was blow off the driveway and sweep those rocks back in the road. And so I'm out mowing, and I see him doing it, and of course I've got about 4 acres I'm mowing, where we're sharing. And so he goes inside, and I'm mowing up near the front where the driveway's at, and I take a look at where the gravel's at, and he just kind of brushes a little bit of it off. It wasn't, like what I would do. And so I text him inside, because all these kids, they have their phone on them. And so I text him inside from the mower, and I text him inside from the mower, and I said, you need to go and sweep the rest of that gravel off the driveway. And then I put a quote in there for myself, and I said, if you always do more than average, you'll always be in demand. And
that's a good quote, man. I like that. I might take that.
Yeah. If you do average or under, you're going to wonder why people don't want you. And if you always do average, or if you do above average, you'll always be in demand.
That must be why all the girls like me instead of you.
But it relates to any position, any job that you do.
Hell yeah.
It really does. I don't care if you're mowing yards.
Yeah.
If you half-ass it, your business will eventually go down.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, that mowing yard thing, let's just take that as an example. Everyone hates that. But I will tell you, if I had to do it again, mowing yards, you could just make an awesome living at if you were good at it.
If you're good. Yep.
Because most yards no one cares about.
Right.
So they're really, really ugly even after they're mowed. And you try to convince your kids that, it's actually a good moneymaker because no one wants to spend the time doing it.
But takes
everyone
effort.
wants a nice yard. But it takes effort, absolutely.
And there's a lot of people out there that don't want the effort.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: when you're working your insurance now, when does the 1% statement come into your mind?
It always does. And it's, I try to say that one of the things I talk a lot about and email a lot about my guys and the reps around the country is that don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. You have to just do it. And so for instance, I have a training conference call every Monday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Right.
Now this is a 104-year company or association, fraternal association for police and fire guys.
Yeah.
How many guys, reps that are with us for over 100 years, the guys through the years, or managers, have taken time after hours to help those across the country by being available on a conference call each week?
Right.
Okay, that's the difference is what I'm talking
Sure.
about. And it's not just helping my own Midwest guys. It's whoever across the country want to join to talk about whatever.
So that's that's even more, right? So that's, you're like, you hit the 1% because you're doing it, but then you're like, well, I'm better than just the 1%. So let's notch it up to the 0.5%.
Well, yeah, and the basically, I would say that the majority of guys through the years, with a lot of areas, it's just not my own association, but a lot of areas are only concerned with the people that are directly below them.
Right.
Okay. So say if they're managers or if they're whatever, I could just focus on the Midwest.
Yeah.
Because I have the Midwest, everybody from Ohio to Colorado. Okay, but I'm not. Everything I do is focused on everyone.
Right.
And so you just, why would I? To me, it doesn't make sense to just focus on the Midwest because this is a whole organization.
Right.
Now, I guess if I was more greedy, that I would just focus on my team. But there's other guys out there that need that help.
Sure. Well, that's what they call above and beyond, not just above. So above is the 1%. Above and beyond is a little higher than that.
Well, I think that may be going the 1%. But I think the part that you go above and beyond is not even the recording every week that I make time for.
Yeah.
It is the editing, the 2 hours afterwards.
Behind the scenes.
Of editing and then posting it to a forum that I've created also for everyone. And then they can go and see archived. It takes probably another 2 hours to edit, upload, and post it to that particular forum. And so, and that forum is for everyone also.
Right.
So I think a lot of that above and beyond, the beyond part it has to be the part that no one sees.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that, though, is what you've done is you've made the activity the relaxing part of that effort.
Right.
Because when you get online and people start asking you questions, it's actually more enjoyable, obviously, and probably easier. It's more intuitive for you than behind the scenes and trying to edit it, put it online,
Oh, it is, because you don't feel like doing it when you're done.
Right.
You feel like just taking a break. But you know there's going to be people from now till whenever at different times that they're available that's going to want to see what we talked about.
Yeah.
And so I tell you what, I really think part of the slogan of be the 1% or do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
It's what you do behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
When no one's watching.
Right.
And no one knows that you're even doing it. And you don't need any kudos.
Yeah.
You just do it because you know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for people because you've seen these guys, in your career, and I've seen these guys, is that they only do something when someone's watching.
Right. Oh yeah.
You have a higher up or somebody.
Yeah.
You see him coming up the ramp or about ready to walk in the door. All of a sudden, this guy grabs a broom and starts looking like he's cleaning or something. So,
right. Yeah.
It's disgusting because you see them at their true form.
Right.
And a guy like myself, and I just say this, I'm not tooting a horn or anything, but I do say this. I don't have to grab that broom because I know inside I'm doing my worst day is probably more than that guy's best day.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of go by that. I kind of like that one, right? Because that's kind of what I've always looked at is I've always wanted my worst day to be better than, the majority of the people that worked around me.
Right.
So that was my standard, right? That is. So my worst day should be better than most people's best day. And but I will tell you, it's interesting because again, with John Maxwell, when we went to that one of the comments that he made was that somebody had come up to him and was like, oh, I can't, I want to be just like you. I want to get on stage. I want to talk to 3,000 people. I want to be overseas and talk to, do all this great stuff. And he, I think we mentioned this before in a podcast, but he's like, well, you can do that, but are you willing to do what I've done? And I venture to say that, and then I don't know if it's a generational thing, because I think people, when we were young, said the exact same thing about us.
Right.
I think every generation says the same thing about the earlier generation,
I think so too.
And so you just everyone just needs to embrace the new capabilities that the younger generations have.
Right.
To move forward. But anyway, but I think a lot of it though was when you're a younger person, no matter what generation, and you're looking at people in their 40s and 50s and 60s working so much, you look at it and go, you know what, I don't want to work that hard. Or that guy's a workaholic. That's not what I want. The guy works too much. Right? Things like that. And in your younger years, I don't know if, I think it's all the same. I know there's a lot of people who do work a lot, but I think just like the what was that one book we were reading, the Napoleon Hill book, basically said that over 30 years, 25 years of study, the majority of people don't hit their peak until they're between 40 and 60 years old.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
And the majority, and this was years ago, and it's still the same now.
Right.
It appears that people hit their peak and are doing much better than you are, right? As we're going through the years, everyone seems to be doing better than us, that kind of thing. But the reality is, when they do this study, and they did this study, and I'm sure it still holds true today, the majority of people only become extremely successful between 40 and 60, and majority of them are between 50 and 60.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting statistic because, to me, what that tells me is it gives you kind of an insight as to why people in their 40s and 50s work so much. is that book, actually, the Napoleon Hill book describes it. It's like, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you have a lot more distractors going on. You're raising a family. You're trying to learn life, stuff that maybe you weren't taught in school, like, buying a house, buying a car, loans, all that kind of stuff. And then, by the time you're in your 40s and 50s, your kids have gone, and you're focused solely on, providing.
I think some people,
increasing.
they start decreasing and some start increasing at that time. I mean, there's people we know that were in their 30s and basically acted like they're 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's nothing out there. Economy's bad, all that. Really. I mean, because you make your own. You are your own journey. I mean, it's So here's an interesting thing too, is that another guy that's very, very cool to listen to. You have to kind of get over the monotone voice, but very enlightening, is Earl Nightingale. And one of the things that this guy says, and he's passed away now and everything. He's one of the older, back in the 60s and 70s. But one of the interesting things that he says is he uses an example, because he's really about, you're in charge of your own mind. You are in control. So you can think and do whatever you want to, or whatever you want to be. You can think that way. You're the only one that can stop you and put limitations on you. And that's the honest truth. But the interesting thing that I was going to say was that he says it was back, I want to say it might have been in the 70s. He was talking about a lot of businesses and a lot of, for instance, a lot of factories were going out of business. A lot of, people that had been with an organization for 20 and 30 years. Mm-hmm. And when the news media guy asked some of them, well, what are you going to do now? And a lot of their reply is, one guy says, well, I'm just going to wait till they open back up. Okay, what if they don't open up? Other people were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. This has all been my life for 30 years. I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
Earl Nightingale says, that's too bad. Right. Because what have you done for the last 30 years? Uh-huh. What have you done extra?
Right.
I mean, we were talking about doing more than expected.
Mm-hmm.
If you took 1 hour a day, I mean, most of those folks, they're working 8 hours, or they're working some overtime.
Yeah.
And I see it in the fire service a lot, where you've dedicated your life to the fire, then you retire and you don't have any skills. You don't know what to do.
Right.
Well, use that creative mind through the years and be interested and knowledgeable of something else.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't taken, instead of just take an hour a day or a half hour a day and just think about a skill that you could do or what you can do extra.
Yeah.
And you create your own jobs.
Well, you have to have that inside of you.
Right. You establish your own limitations. Mm-hmm. He goes, how can you feel sorry for a guy that's been doing this 35 years when he's had the same opportunities and time that everyone else has to do something different, to learn, not necessarily do different, but learn things.
Well, it's interesting. When we went to that Maxwell conference, the one thing that he and his guys there were talking about was the one thing that remains consistent, no matter if you're making $1 billion or $1 a day, or your own welfare, is everyone's got 24 hours to a day. And what was interesting to me is the way, and sometimes it's easier. I mean, obviously, like as a coach, it's easier when you're talking to folks and to allow them to get it out of their system, right? Or to discuss it out loud, and sometimes it surfaces the subconscious and things. So, what he was talking about and what they were trying to convey to people is just like you're doing today, is you multitask. So for instance, if you're on a commute and your reason for not being able to do additional things is because you're like me, I commute 2 hours to work and 2 hours back. Well, what can you do when you're on that commute simultaneously to make it a productive commute? Right? And so you start thinking of a lot of different things that you can do simultaneously to actually be productive. Now, like for me, what I've done is I put an advertisement wrap on my truck. And so now when I drive in traffic, I normally get into the slow lane, believe it or not, because I want people to pass me and see my truck. And so, it's counterintuitive, but it makes my drive more enjoyable because it's a productive drive now instead of what I believed was, I initially perceived it to be a waste of time. Now I've made it productive.
Right. And like ourselves, right now, this podcast that we do typically is in the car. I mean, I'm currently in the car driving and making this time productive. I always say it to Lisa, always tell her that I feel like I've got a master's or doctorate in audiobook learning, because a lot of this how-to, I'll listen for hours and genuinely listen and learn while I'm on the road.
Yeah. Well, and that's one good thing too. Look, when you're commuting and you don't have time and you're listening to audiobooks, right? You're simultaneously tasking. You wouldn't normally be listening to those books if you weren't on your commute. I mean, if you were at home, you'd be getting up at 9 o'clock, driving 2 minutes to work, but you would never be listening or reading the books that you've listened to or read.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't unless you made time somehow during the day to pick that book up and do it.
Right.
Really, anything today in today's world can be learned. Just pop up YouTube. Mm-hmm. You can learn anything, any skill.
Yeah. It's
all on there.
Yeah.
How to, whatever. And if you have a few minutes a day, watch, if you feel like you want to do any skill, plumbing, electrical, anything, everything is on YouTube on how to do it.
Yeah.
So there is really no excuses, and the excuses drive me nuts. It absolutely drives me nuts, because usually it's just really finding excuses for laziness. What it boils down to.
So what's the final word, man?
Thunderbird? No, it's
That's your safe word. I didn't want to hear your safe word.
We used to say that in the Army during cadence. No, what? Let me ask you, what is your final words of advice? And
I'll always exceed. I'll always make your worst day better than anybody else around you, and it better than their best day. And always do the right thing so you can sleep at night, and it'll come to it'll help you tremendously throughout the years. And,
I think you have to give something in order to receive. There's a yin and yang to everything, and you definitely have to either sacrifice, you have to give your time, you have to be nice to people or whatever in order to get it back. So if your world is bad, if you have a really, really bad world and everything seems like it's coming down on you, it's probably a reflection of you.
Yeah.
And you have to turn it around, and the only way to do that is to start changing yourself, I believe.
Yeah.
So
well, and I don't want to get into politics, but when somebody looks at somebody like Trump, who's a billionaire, and says that he sleeps only 3 hours a night, I look at that and say, I would love to be a billionaire, but I don't want to only sleep 3 hours a night, right? I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm going to do what it takes to become a billionaire. If that's what it takes to become a billionaire, then I guess that's out of the question because I'm not willing to do it. If
Right.
I was willing to do that, then it might. Then that that's the one person who's always said that they work basically 22 hours a day every day.
Exactly. He's always said that.
Yeah, 7 days a week. So okay, that's the formula. If I'm not willing to do that, then I'm not willing to. If I'm I can't be a billionaire obviously if I'm not following that plan, right? And so. So if I want to be a billionaire, then guess what? I would work 22 hours a day, and
Well, I think the bottom line, I don't know if it's and to me, it's really not about the money. It's about being the 1%.
Yeah,
and
right.
No matter what it is, it's not really about the money to me. It's about being successful in your own way.
Yeah.
Whatever you think success is.
Yeah.
And it's usually the guys who are successful are the ones that have gave more than average. If you're only giving average or below and waiting for someone to tell you to do things and not take initiative, then you're always going to be
Well, they
below
spend
average.
their time on. I mean, really, they spend the time that everyone has during the day, the 24 hours in a day. The majority of their time is spent on profitable activities. And, so that makes a big difference.
Productive activities that make a difference in their own world.
Yeah.
And they're not wasting a lot of time. They're
Right.
utilizing that time in different ways to benefit themselves and their family or their business. But they're not wasting a lot of time. So just like, that guy works constantly, and but a lot of successful people do. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever line of work they're in, they are. When you seems like when you travel, like I've been traveling, and there's not much downtime because I don't have anything else to do other than work.
Right.
And so if I was maybe below average or waited for someone to tell me what to do, I'd have a lot of time. So when someone always says, "Yeah, that was an easy job for me," I guess you didn't do much because you probably just waited for something to happen instead of making it happen. So, there's a lot of difference of an opinion of the perspective of different jobs out there too, of what a lot of people just want to be average, but I think you and I, and there's a lot of people out there that do more than what's expected, and we kind of fill our lives up. But honestly, I really feel like I have a lot of stuff in my head that I just feel like I've got to get done, and going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You've got
Yeah.
books out that you sell,
Right.
BattlefieldResumes.com, and I have a book that's going to be published here pretty soon, and it's just things in our head that we just want to excel and overachieve. So you only got one life, you might as well give it all you got.
Right. Overachieving 1%,
That sounds
man.
good, dude.
That's what it is.
That's right.
1%'s average. Shoot
higher.
above and beyond.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey,
all right, buddy. I got to take
we
off.
will talk to you later, man.